welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everybody. This is Evelyn Hershkowitz, Reader Services Librarian on Turn the Page, Syosset Library's podcast. I'm here today with Ellen Wiseman. On the book, though, she goes by Ellen Marie Wiseman, and we're here to talk about the Lost Girls of Willowbrook. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Ellen, and then we'll get on with a conversation with her. Ellen Wiseman is a New York Times bestselling author of highly acclaimed novels based on real historical events and social injustices, whether evoking the immigrant experience of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic in The Orphan Collector, the haunting treatment of the 1930s asylum patients and What She Left Behind, the resilience of children exposed to atrocious conditions in an early 1900s coal town in Coal River, or the lives reflected in the plum tree, the life she was given, and the Lost Girls of Willowbrook. Wiseman's novels are praised for the compassion, authenticity, and depth with which they explore subjects often ignored or forgotten. Born and raised in 3 Mile Bay, a teeny hamlet in northern New York, she's a first-generation German-American who discovered her love of reading and writing while attending first grade in one of the last one-room schoolhouses in New York State. Since then, her novels have been translated into 20 languages and published worldwide. A mother of 2, Ellen lives on the shores of Lake Ontario with her husband and dog. So Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, which comes out on August 30th, 2022. And for all of you Syosset patron listeners, the book will be available in print form, and it'll also be available in audiobook and ebook. So please get your reserves in. Call us at the Reader Services desk, and we'll be happy to do that for you. So thank you, Ellen, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And why don't we tell everybody what the Lost Girls of Willowbrook is about?
Well, the Lost Girls of Willowbrook is set at the Willowbrook State School on Staten Island in 1970s, early 1970s. And Willowbrook State School was a real life institution. It was a New York State institution. And it was the school that Geraldo Rivera did an expose on in 1972, and it eventually was closed down. You know, he exposed the terrible conditions there and stuff, and it was eventually closed down, but it took about 15 years. But so Lost Girls of Willowbrook is about a young girl who believes that her twin sister had died from pneumonia 6 years previously, and she finds out that her sister is actually alive and was committed to Willowbrook. And so she wants to find out what happened to her sister. And so she goes to Willowbrook. She doesn't really know that much about it other than the rumors and the urban legends that she's heard about the place. So she goes to Willowbrook and she wants to help with a search for her sister, but the doctors and everyone thinks that she's the missing twin. And so they commit her. And so she has to figure out what happened to her twin. And so she doesn't, so she can find her, and she also doesn't get committed for the rest of her life.
Right. So those of us who live around here, we've all heard of Willowbrook. I can't believe it took 15 years to close that place out.
I know. I think it might have been longer. For some reason, I'm getting the number mixed up in my head right at the moment. It was either 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
It's been 35 years since it closed.
Right.
And this year is actually the 50th anniversary of Geraldo Rivera's expose.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that when I wrote the book.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of research did you have to do? Was it grueling and hard to take?
It was very hard to take. I write about really tough subjects. I've written about the Holocaust and child labor and all of those kinds of things.
Spanish flu, yes.
Yeah. And I bought several books on the subject, but the one that really helped me the most was the history and sociology of Willowbrook State School. And that was written by several people, but one of them was one of the doctors that helped close it down. And that book was really, really tough to read, but it was beyond heartbreaking, but it was a fascinating look at how that place was allowed to happen.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, after reading it, I can't even believe what these young people had to go through. It's
Right.
just,
And I actually toned it down.
did
I-
you?
It was much worse than,
Wow.
yeah, but it was just too horrendous to, tell the honest truth in a novel.
Yeah. No, it just, it was sad, very sad at the beginning. It was overwhelmingly sad. And
Mhm.
then there was a mystery, so it picked up.
Right.
And then it was like I couldn't put it down. It was just so good. It was just so good. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Well,
writing.
Well, thank you for reading it. I like to, write about these historical events by adding an interesting story to it, because otherwise people don't just want to read about the history and stuff. They want to have a story. So I want to try to keep people to keep turning the pages.
It's unbelievable that they allowed this to happen in New York State. Hopefully there
Yeah.
aren't many other places that were like this, but unfortunately there probably were.
Right. And all the patients were moved to smaller homes and stuff, but there's still some abuse going on, and the fight for disability rights is still ongoing even after all this time. And we always say we have to remember the Holocaust and we have to remember what happened, but we need to remember the things that happened, here and more recently also.
Yeah, right in our state. I
Right.
mean, it's horrible, 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 horrible. Did you watch the Geraldo piece? I'm sure you watched that.
I did. It's very heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, you put that in the book.
Yes. I wanted to, it was such a big deal, and it really kind of helped the plot a little bit. So.
Right. Well, if it wasn't for him, who knows how long it would have been till they discovered what was going on.
Exactly. I
I
mean, I
mean,
know that there was patients and doctors and also journalists writing about it, but it really took people to see it with their own eyes on national television for them to really get upset.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craziness.
Hmm.
Crazy. And how did you come up with the story? I mean, how did you figure
Well,
out?
interestingly enough, I was first heard about Willowbrook through a documentary called Cropsey, which is about an urban legend about a serial killer that was kind of connected to Willowbrook. And, I thought, what is this Willowbrook place? I'd never heard of it. And so I started researching it more. And then I realized that was the place that Geraldo Rivera had done the expose on and stuff. And it all just kind of came together. And I wanted to tell the story from someone who didn't belong there rather than someone just trying to help someone in there, because I wanted to get that more intimate and visceral experience, by writing from the point of view from someone on the inside.
Mhm.
Mhm.
How long did it take you to write this book?
About 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had I was on a deadline. It was 2 years. The deadline was 2 years, but there was a lot going on during that time because it was during COVID and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think my editor was like, it's okay. You can take a little longer if you need to,
Right.
because it can be hard to concentrate when everything is kind of
Yeah.
strange around you.
Well, you live upstate New York on Lake Ontario.
Yes, I do.
So what's going on up there? Everything okay with COVID or?
Yeah, everything seems to be not too bad, but I know it's still around.
Yeah.
I think it's not being reported as much.
Mhm. How far are you from Oswego? That's where I went to school.
About an hour and a half. My daughter
Oh.
went there too.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
And I know you like their bookstore, River End.
Yep. You can actually order signed copies
Oh,
of this
great.
book from them.
From River
Yeah,
End in Oswego, New York.
Yeah, they have a link on their website to order, and get them personalized too if you want them to somebody.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Are you going to be out on the road with this book promoting it?
Yeah, I'm doing quite a few things locally, and I'm also going to do an event at River's End.
Oh, great.
And then I'm going to be at in Manhattan at a library in Manhattan, Hudson Park, I think. Oh dear, I can't remember the name of it right now.
Oh, okay.
I have
Is it
so
on
many
your
things going on.
Is it on your website? Can people go to your website and find?
It's not
your
yet,
website?
but it will be.
Okay.
I can send you the the little graphic that my publicist made for me so far. And
Okay.
she's going to be setting up other events in Manhattan and possibly on Staten Island too. So
Okay, great.
yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So those of us listening in the area, if you want to see Ellen, you could contact me and I could give you the information, or you can go to her website. So you'll be able to find all that information there.
Right. And the one at the library, I'm also going to be one of the doctors that was instrumental in closing the place down will be there. And it's going to be him and I in conversation about Willowbrook.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Are you going
And
to the site where Willowbrook was? Is that one of the
Willowbrook,
plans?
it's the College of Staten Island now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're trying to set up something there. We're not sure if it's going to happen or not, but I know that my publicist is working on it. And actually the doctor who gave Geraldo Rivera the key has read the book too.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. So that was pretty amazing. He said it made him feel proud that he was part of closing it down.
Mhm. He was a
Yeah.
doctor that was actually working there?
Yeah. He was the one that got fired and then gave Geraldo Rivera the key.
Okay. Is
Yep.
the character in the book based on him?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's his name too.
Oh,
It's Dr. Wilkins.
Okay, so you used real names in the book.
Yeah, for certain things, like I used Geraldo Rivera and I used
Right.
Dr. Wilkins and a few other people too.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Is this book going to be, I'm assuming it's going to be out on audio?
Yes.
Did you have did you get to pick the audio narrator?
No, normally the audio recording company just buys the rights from my
Oh.
publisher and then they
Mhm.
decide who's doing it.
Yeah, no, I read it because I wasn't able to find the audio book because it's not out yet, obviously.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I love to listen to the audiobook. I'm sure this will make a very, very good audiobook.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be
Hope
really
so.
great. Yeah. So you working on anything else? What's your next topic?
Actually, I am working on something else. It's kind of a broad topic, so I'm kind of having a hard time reining it in right now, but it's eugenics in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
It's the belief, well, there was some eugenicists in America that, trying to create the master race.
Oh,
They sterilized people that didn't really consent to it. And it all kind of ties in together. It all, they kind of are some of the people that came up with the ideas of making places like Willowbrook and insane asylums. Let's just shut these people off from society. Back in the 20s and stuff, you'd be able to see, propaganda signs about, every 15 seconds, somebody who is born that is a burden on society and stuff.
oh wow.
And like the Carnegie Institute is actually the place that actually came up with the idea for gas chambers. And Adolf Hitler wrote the top eugenicists in America like fan letters and stuff. So it's crazy. It's crazy. They used to have the better baby contests at the fair. So they would pick out the ideal family and this is what you are aspired to. And, they'd sterilize people that they didn't think should have kids. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
You really get into these tough topics.
I do. I like to write about things that people don't know about,
Sure.
didn't learn about in school,
No, absolutely. I think this book will open a lot of people's eyes that had no idea that this even took place. They might not have seen the Geraldo Rivera thing because they were too young, or
Exactly.
weren't even born yet. I mean, if it's 50
Right.
years, there's plenty of people out there. I'm sure my children have no idea.
Right.
So
Mine either.
yeah. So this will
You know?
definitely open their eyes to
know,
see.
We have to remember that, we can't let a place like that happen again. And I hope it's going to be a reminder that we need to be more protective of the most vulnerable among us and treat them with kindness and compassion. And they have as many rights as we do. So
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, I think medicine has come a long way also in 50 years.
right.
That a lot of these people, if they're medicated, they don't need to be in these kind of places.
Exactly.
They can
And-
be out
and-
and function in
Right.
society.
Right. And people were put there, kids were put there for, things like epilepsy or just,
Yeah.
things that we know how to take care of now.
Right.
And it also became a dumping ground for people that didn't either just didn't want their kids, or like foster kids that they couldn't place. Or, sometimes they would find kids would be left at like a train station with a sign around their neck that said, "Take me to Willowbrook." So there was kids there that didn't even belong there at
Right.
all. And no, none of the kids belonged there because it was a terrible place. It was overfunded or not underfunded and overcrowded and just terrible, understaffed and all of that. So, but I also read like accounts of like well-to-do families that didn't know how to deal with their teenager. They would pay to have their IQ test lowered so they could admit them to Willowbrook.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And, of course, these kids, they grew up in there. So there was adults there that had been there their whole lives,
Yeah.
So it was a pretty terrible place.
And it was actually called Willowbrook School, but yet there was no schooling going on at all.
Right. Very, very little schooling going on. More so for the kids that were subjected to medical experiments. There was such a long waiting list for kids to be put there that sometimes parents would agree to let their kids have certain vaccinations and things, be in trials for vaccinations. But the way I've read some of the letters that like the doctors and stuff sent to the parents, and it was very misleading. It was like, well, this, especially like hepatitis was a big medical experiment there, hepatitis vaccines. And, the letters that they sent to the parents were misleading, saying like, there's a lot of hepatitis here, and there was, because it's very contagious, and this will protect your child. And if you agree to let them have this vaccination or be in this trial, I don't even think they called it a trial, they will have better rooms and they will get some schooling and things like that. So, there was I think at one point 70 different medical experiments going on there, and a lot of that was funded by the Defense Department.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. How many people were housed there altogether?
Well, it was supposed to hold like 4,000, but it got up to, in the 60s, it got up to like 6,000. And when it closed, it was about 6,000.
That's unbelievable. How do you even staff a place to take
Right.
care of 6,000 people? And
that was, part of the problem. It was very hard to get staff, and they just would hire anybody without doing any background checks, they'd hire ex-criminals and things like that. And it was such an underground city almost, because it was closed off from the public, that it had its own hierarchy in society. And, the staff didn't trust the nurses because they thought they were reporting to administration, and the staff was like, if they were afraid of each other, because, if you tried to rat on somebody by seeing them do something wrong, you could walk out to the parking lot and get beat up or have your tires slashed or whatever. But it was such a underground city that, the staff could buy and sell everything from jewelry to drugs to meat it was just crazy.
Wow. So it wasn't a great place to live, and it certainly wasn't a great place to work either.
Exactly. And like you said, there was so many people there, there'd be like one or two attendants taking care of like 70 people.
Wow.
And it was just enough of a job just to keep them clean and fed and under control. And, the staff were helpless too. Of course, like anywhere, like any institution or any place, you have people that did terrible things and you have people that did really good things. There was also, reports of staff buying soap and deodorant and things for the inmates. I say inmates because that's what Dr. Wilkins called them. He said they weren't patients, they were inmates. Yeah. But and I call them residents in the book because it's they weren't really patients because they weren't really being taken care of.
Right. They weren't being treated for anything.
Right. So there was a huge staffing problem and trying to take care of that many people, but they didn't train the staff either. And to get through the day sometimes without somebody getting hurt or whatever, they had to resort to like straitjackets and tying people to their beds and things like that, so it was just a whole chaos, playing off each other problem. Very difficult.
Sure.
And the administration was more worried about, the paper and, paperwork, and, if even if somebody didn't really need to be there, they'd want to keep them there to get the money for them. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Because it was state funded, and
right.
it's just amazing to me that nobody in the state was able to do anything.
Mhm.
They just let this
Well,
go on.
Even, they had politicians there. Kennedy had gone through it and said it was a snake pit, and that still didn't change it.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I think it says that something about that in the back of the book,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
People were aware, but not enough people were aware.
Right. I guess until it was broadcast on
Exactly.
television.
Right.
But like you said, it still took years and years to close the place down.
Right.
I mean, I guess what do you do with all these people? You can't just let them out. You have to find safe places for them to be.
Right.
Yeah, it's really sad, but
Mhm.
it's a sad story, but it's a great book. So I just want everybody to know, it's these things have to be brought out to the public. People have to know about it.
Right. And I hope that people will be, inspired by the main character's, resiliency and her ability to turn, and you know what she does at the end of the book, and her ability to turn heartbreak into something good. She ended up turning things around for herself. And,
right. Was she based on anybody?
No, not really. I can't really say. No, no, she wasn't.
Okay.
Part of the very end, and I'm not going to say what that is.
Right.
Was based on a real person.
Okay.
Do you know what part I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. Okay. I don't want to give
Right.
anything away.
It's really hard sometimes to talk about a book and not give things away.
Right. No, it always is. That's why I always like the author to be the one that tells what the story's about, because I don't want to give anything away.
Right.
I don't want to be the one that ruins it for anybody
Right.
at all. I really don't. Now, when you write books like this, do you have it all planned out? I mean, is it?
I usually try to have an outline. And I like to know the ending, because I'm always on a deadline, and I don't have like 6 months to, go down the wrong road, go write it, write for 6 months and say, oh, this isn't working, I need to start over. So
Yeah.
I do try to have an outline, and as long as I know the ending, I'm pretty, free to, I don't always follow the outline exactly. I'm kind of free to meander around if I want to, as long as I know where I'm going.
Is that where you write, right where you're sitting now, or?
Yeah,
That's your
in
office?
here or outside on my deck in the summertime. Or,
It must be beautiful overlooking the lake, huh?
Yeah, it is.
That's so nice. Yeah. I mean, I lived for 4 years right on the lake, so I know it's very nice.
It is
very peaceful to live on a lake. No doubt about that. That's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Winters are tough though.
Right.
You gotta take the good with the bad. It's not always all good.
I wish summer was a little longer than it is, but
no, winters are a killer up there. No doubt about it. So do you have like a list of all these social injustices that you want to write about?
Yeah, sometimes I do come up with a list, but some of them are not. I haven't figured out how to make them into a novel yet, but I'm always looking for ideas. So if any readers have any ideas, I'm always open to ideas. Like, the reader, or the idea for the Orphan Collector actually came from a reader, because she had asked me if I'd heard of the Spanish flu, and I had, but not as, once I started researching it and learned more about it, it was like, wow, why don't we know more about this? And it's the same with Willowbrook. Why don't we know that this happened in this country? And Willowbrook wasn't the only place. There was a lot of institutions around this country like that, and I think that they, to a smaller degree, still exist in certain places, maybe not these warehouses like that was, but even some of these smaller homes are maybe not run the way that they should be.
Unbelievable. What number book is this, Ellen?
This is number 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do before you were writing?
I was part-time bookkeeper at my family's business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I used to write as a hobby when I was bringing up my kids. And then when they graduated and stuff, I just decided to get serious about it. And that's when I knew I had to write The Plum Tree, because that was based on my family in World War II in Germany. So that was the one that got me going.
So that was the first book you wrote, and it got published right away, huh?
Yeah. Well, not right away. It took me 2 years to find an agent. Yeah.
That's not so bad. I've heard worse.
I know it's not as bad.
Yeah. So you always wanted to be an author. You knew that was your passion, and
I really didn't, because I went to a tiny high school. There was like 400 kids. Well, not even a high school. It was 400 kids in K through 12, and so there was no creative writing courses offered there. So I really hadn't even explored it in school, and I didn't go to college. So I just was a big reader, and always thought it would be fun to be a writer. And sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's very difficult.
So what are some of your favorite authors?
Oh, gee, that's hard, because I like so many different. I mean, my first love was Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Anne Rice and all of that stuff. But yeah, I read all sorts of, all over the place. So
what have you read recently?
What did I? Oh, the one that I just read recently that I loved was The Second Mrs. Astor. Do you know? Have you read that one?
No, I haven't read that one.
Her name is hard to pronounce. Shanna Abe, Abe, I believe. And it's about the Titanic, but it's a beautiful. It's just a beautifully written book, and I just loved it. And it's got a fantastic storyline, even though you kind of know what happens in the end. But you're hoping through the whole thing. You're hoping through the whole thing that things are going to turn out better than they did. But that was just a beautiful book.
Okay, I'm gonna look that one up. That sounds right up my alley. I like reading about Second Mrs. Astor. Okay, got it. I'm gonna look to read that. Add it to my ever-growing list of books.
Right.
But that's not a bad thing,
Right.
Luckily, there are authors like you that are out there writing great books that we can all enjoy.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, there's nothing I like better than a good story, and this one got you, good story, got you going. I have to say, I really enjoyed it.
Thank
very
you
much. Yeah, I just couldn't stop once I got going.
That's great to hear. That's what I try to. I want people to keep turning the pages.
I did. I definitely just kept turning the pages until I was finished.
Awesome.
And I think it'll make a great book discussion.
Yeah.
I think it definitely so will. It'll be a good discussion. So those of you out there who like to do book discussions, this is a good one. So I highly recommend it. So I thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for reading my book.
Oh, you're so welcome. Hopefully it's a little cooler by you, right off on the lake there.
Yeah,
it's down here. Just know when you come down to New York area, it's a little hot and humid down here.
Oh, I know. Even in September, right?
Yeah, it's hot and humid.
Yeah.
Well, you might get lucky if you're coming down the end of August, or not till the beginning of September.
Sometime after the 15th of September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the event at it's Hudson something library. I think is it Hudson Park? I'm not sure. That is the 21st of September.
Okay, we'll all look forward to hearing about that, and hopefully we can make it there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. This is Evelyn signing off from Turn the Page podcast from the Syosset Public Library.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ellen Wiseman.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.